So if Wade's not here, it's just you guys again today.
Hey, we gotta be the only. Somehow my son got put on. So that's.
Happy Father's Day, by the way.
Oh, thanks, you too.
Oh yeah, we forgot all about it being Father's Day.
Father's Day,
That's the
Or
year.
whatever.
When I went in, it's just tendons, I think, it's not broken, so I'm gonna hopefully talk to my doctor on Wednesday, because I haven't went in, but they're not the same system, so I don't know if she's gonna be like, well, we don't have it. She's gonna use it from the end, hopefully not, because I'm on pay for it. The whole reason I went on post was so I didn't pay anything. So these are some PT ones, a Smithsonian one, and a essential oil one, I don't know if they're any good.
Turns out we don't have a lot of magazines.
That's okay, we look for libraries and somebody picks those up all the time, so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay.
Okay, we're gonna finish up, the review of the prospectus today, and we're now on page 68. Last week, we reviewed some of the mission board information and some of the, Board of Regents information. Board of Regents, of course, deals with ILC. Today, we're going to look through the Board of Trustees report, and then, a little bit more. This is where we get into the big numbers that I'm not as good at. Which is unfortunate because that's the committee I'm on this year, and that's when my eyes will gloss over. But there's some things to point out. You'll see there on page 68 that they have a listing of the discrepancies between the CBP estimates and the actual offerings to the CBP. CBP stands for the Cooperative Budget Plan. This is something that the CLC instituted, probably 30, maybe 40 years ago, where every year the congregations give an estimate as to how much they're going to send in for the synodical work. It's sometimes listed as missions in the bulletin. And of course, it includes a lot more than missions. It includes the support, helping to support ILC. It includes, yes, our mission work, but it also includes some other things such as, we still have some people on the old retirement plan where they just receive a small bit of compensation on a monthly basis. That is going away slowly but surely, but there's still some of that left where, especially some widows, that before we got onto the retirement plan we have now, where every called worker has their own retirement account. Before it was like just a pool of money, and then the people who would retire, or if they passed away and left a spouse, that money, some of that money would go to them on a monthly basis. Not very much, but it was some. So we're not doing that anymore, but there's still some people on it. So our missions offerings also goes to help support that. So you got the three main boards. There's four boards. You got Board of Education and Publication. They have a very tiny budget, but that comes out of the CBP. You got the Board of Regents. They got a large budget, but the CLC only provides a certain percentage of their budget. You got the Board of Missions. The CLC provides, the Cooperative Budget Plan provides all of that. And you have the Board of Trustees, and our missions offerings also supports all of that. Anyways, sometimes you'll see a difference between the CBP estimate and then the budget that is set by the coordinating council. The CBP estimate is almost always a smaller number, and then the coordinating council comes and sets a larger budget. Well, why do they do that when the members say, hey, this is how much we're planning on sending in this year? And the reason that they budget much larger is because almost always the actual offerings to the CBP are a lot more than the estimates. For example, you can go year by year here. You got 2013 through 2023. In every year, the estimates were more or were less than the actual contributions. And so they try to take that into account too, and they say, okay, well, they're saying this much, but history shows us they're actually sending in this much. And it's getting increasingly that way. You can see in 2020, 857,000 was the estimate, but the actual offering was 1,090,000. So you got a difference there of 233,000. Now, that line that says, okay, we estimated for 2022 925,000 total, and they say we're projected to receive 1 million. The only discrepancy I see with that, I just recently, and it was on the bulletin, I think last week on the back of the bulletin, where the offerings are significantly down, like 181,000. We only have, 3 weeks left, 2 weeks left of the fiscal year. So I don't know why they're projecting 1 million, but remember, this was printed back in April. So the offerings must have taken a significant downturn since then to the CBP. But I think it was 189. Anybody have last week's bulletin sitting here? I think I've got them in the garbage.
Might be in the
General fund, yeah, we're down 181,000 after 11 months. So 181,000 of the, not of the estimate, mind you, of the actual budget. Maybe that's why, because the estimate, that doesn't show on here. So the estimate on here is 925,000, but the budget was 1,155,000. So that's why there's a difference. Anyhow, they are proposing for next year's budget. You can see over on the next page, the proposed, this is what was sent in at the beginning of this year. The estimates that the congregation sent in was $952,700. The proposed budget is 1.242 million. So that's 200, almost 300,000 more than the CBP estimate. Now, the question is, what will the economic situation of our, that our nation is in right now, how will that affect it? That's a guessing game, and we try not to play the guessing game. You do see a chart there on the bottom of page 69 that shows the difference between the typical difference between the estimates and the actual. Any questions on that or comments? Okay, on the top of the next page you have another chart. See, I like charts because I can process that a little bit better than I can columns of numbers. You have all offerings listed there. That's the dark line. And that includes like to kinship, to MDF, to ILC Improvement Fund. You can see there all offerings to the Synod are getting close to 1.8 million. And you also see the ILC student revenue. It's actually, it had a little bit of an uptick, and then it went down, and then a little bit of an uptick, but now you can see it's kind of going down dramatically. What does that mean? That means it's not that the cost of attending ILC is less. It's that the number of students attending ILC is less. So that's why there's a downturn there.
Well, the cost of running it too, I mean, like electricity, that kind of stuff that's gone up too.
Right, but this is just how much revenue is received through the students. So when you add everything up from the students and the contributions, you can see we're going to be almost at 3 million for total operations as a church body. Now, that doesn't include, of course, individual congregations. If you add everything that goes into the individual congregations, you're probably gonna be over 10 million. Maybe not. Most of the congregations are smaller. I would say at least over 6 million. Anyhow, going on, church extension fund, I'm not gonna go through the paragraph, I'm gonna do what I do and go over to the chart on the next page. You have 3 lines there. The dark line is how much money individual congregations owe to the CEF. So that's still called an asset in a financial way because it's money that will be coming in, but it's money that's loaned out. And then you have the gray line, which is fund liabilities. That is money that is owed to individuals who loaned money to the CEF, but it's still their money, and they're drawing interest on it. So you can see that number is going down. That's been a concerted effort over the past 20 years or so to no longer have other people's money in the fund, as long as it can be a self-sustaining. That's what they're working at, is becoming a self-sustaining fund. The CEF, by the way, is basically the COC bank. If a church needs to build something, instead of going to a local bank, they will go to the Board of Trustees and say, hey, can you loan us some money? For example, Messiah and Eau Claire received almost $2 million, $1.9 million from the CEF. And that's why you see a significant uptick in the loans to the dark line there from 2021 to 2022. It went up $1 million. Why only $1 million when Messiah borrowed almost $2 million? Well, because don't forget, somebody left a sizable amount of money and it paid off the academic center, and that was still up a little over $1 million there. So, and then you have the dotted line. The dotted line is the cash on hand. How much money is actually in that account right now in the bank. And so what you see there is you see it swinging up. This has been something that the trustees have told us, look, we're going to be in a weird situation soon if we're not careful, and that is there's so much money in the CEF that we won't know what to do. We won't know what to do with it. Well, all it took was Messiah to have a building program, and that took care of half of it. But you can, so those two, the dotted line and the dark line, you can see how they kind of match each other. As the mortgages increase, the cash on hand decreases. But as the cash on hand increases, the mortgages are decreasing. Why? Because churches are paying off their mortgages, which means the money's going back into the bank. Anyhow, so where we sit right now, there's just over $2 million in the CEF account right now, with an additional $4 million out in mortgage. But then you got to take away the $1 million that is owned, so that leaves us at a cash value of $5 million in the CEF. Make sense? Would it be easier if I just talked about dollars and $5 bills? That's easier for me to comprehend. If I loan Jediah $1, it's still my dollar. I just have to wait for him to pay it back. Okay, CLC code compensation. This has been something that has been a concerted effort of convention, although in the last few conventions, there have been some questions, hey, maybe we are getting to where we wanted to be all along, and we don't need to keep this dramatic increase. Because it is a rather dramatic increase when you look at the total numbers. I mean, add up everybody who's making this amount. But they adopted a plan, I was in the ministry already. when it was adopted, where, now this is true only for synodical workers and mission workers. So I'm included on this. All congregations don't have to pay this according to this code. They're encouraged to, but not all of them can, or don't, whichever the case may be. But so you can see every year they're trying to increase a standard increase plus a cost of living increase that's based on inflation. So and then there's other things that get carried over into it. For example, $6.25 per month per year of service up to 20 years. So like I'm already maxed out on that because I'm past 20 years. So that adds 120 plus 2025 is another $5, so $125 onto the code. Plus the CLC retirement, which increases to $220 in January. That's tier 1. Tier 2 is, and essentially the only people that are on the tier 2 plan are the professors at ILC and other staff at ILC. They add $1,000 to it because they can't provide insurance. And so what they did is they got out of providing the insurance for the professors. They added $1,000 to their salary. The professors now have to go find their own, not just the professors, all the call workers. So they have to go find their own insurance. Now the individual trustees budget, this is not the entire synodical budget. You can see how the trustees budget is not very big. They're proposing for 2023 that their total expenditure be $72,840. Now when that number gets big is when the CLC has a mortgage to the CDF. For example, the academic center, well, who pays that? It's not ILC that pays that, it's the trustees that pay that. It comes up because it's a church body program, not an ILC building program. ILC doesn't have the authority to build. The church body is the only one that has the authority to build. So no building program ever goes onto ILC's budget. So if the building program that they are suggesting, which we'll get to in a moment, actually gets enacted, you're going to see the trustees' budget suddenly balloon because they're going to have like $75,000 a month payments to me. Anyhow, CLC retirement plan, that's just continuing on every year. Every year there's a $10 increase to that, and what the retirement plan is nowadays is for example, what Zion sends in for me every year goes into an account that is in my name, and then it's a Roth IRA account. And so when I turn a certain age or retire or whatever, then I can start drawing on that. And that's the plan that was enacted. Now, it was a great idea until we had two major downturns. The first one was back in the early 2000s. Well, right after the Bush administration, we had that significant downturn. That was like 5 years. Every month they were sending in money, but every month my retirement account was going the wrong way. Well, now it's doing it again. So I just now got caught back up to where I was, and now it's going backwards again. That's the nature of those things. I suppose, if I didn't have mine as aggressive as I have it, it would have been, we're allowed to distribute it between three basic columns. One is secured, where you're drawing very little interest, but your money doesn't ever go away. One is more medium, where you draw a little bit more interest, but if there's a downturn, it doesn't go away as fast. And then there's another one where you should be getting a lot of interest when things are going well, but when things go bad, you lose a lot. And most of mine's in that third category. I don't know why, just because I feel like I'm gonna work until I can't work anymore, so.
You just make it so you can't retire unless it's a good year.
Right. Or, my wife can go get a job when I retire, right?
My wife already has a job.
Yeah, I mean, a full time. Anyways, just teasing there. So you got a summary of all resources to the programs. That's the kind of stuff that makes my eyes gloss over, but if you wanna look through that, you're more than welcome to. Now, these next two pages are the ones that I talked about last week. These are kinship and mission development. And this is the one, and I'm gonna talk to the mission board about this, because in their report, they said, we don't think we should be involved in schools. And yet, they clearly are involved in schools, just not stateside. But you can see their budget there and go through it. The MDF, kinship and MDF do not come out of the CBP. These are individual funds that are funded individually. In other words, only by contributions that members make to those funds directly. And then with the money that they have on hand, they end up with a list of things that they want to do, and then they're one-time projects, generally, though not always just one time. For example, the Congo Bible School construction, it was 2018, 2019, 2020, they had it budgeted $20,000 a year. You can see the GBO allocation. It's 12,000, 13,500, 14,000. I don't know why that's in the MDF. That should be in their general budget. Things of that nature. And there's other things too, like they're trying to call a third missionary. They've been trying to do that for a while, but once they get one, initially the funding for that will come out of the MDF, and then it might take a few years to get it out of the MDF and roll it into their annual budget. You see the missions and ILC offerings, the totals there. That is done to demonstrate. There was a concern years ago that, okay, we used to give a lot more to ILC to try and keep it less costly for the students, and then a lesser amount would end up at missions. But over time, it seemed like more and more was going to missions, and less was going to ILC. Well, that's actually technically true as a percentage-wise, because initially the CLC subsidized 50% of ILC. So the students were only taking the other 50% through their tuition and room and board. Now it's closer to like 70-30. But the reason this chart is in is to demonstrate the disparity is not as much as it seems. You can see both in each case from 2010 all the way through 2021. They're pretty close to the same. They go back and forth a little bit, but they're pretty close to the same. ILC Improvement Fund, there's always projects that need to be done there that fall outside of the budget. A lot of it has to do with keeping the professораges, maintaining the buildings. Sometimes there's little projects that go into that that need to be done, such as buying a new bus, or maybe some improvement to some athletic facility or equipment. Board of Education and Publication, you can see their small budget is, well, total dispersed in 2020 was $60,000. Total dispersed in 2021 is $55,000. And the balance that they have right now is $67,734. Board of Trustees, these are endowments. That is money that is on hand but cannot be spent. The only thing that can be spent is the interest from it. This is what is keeping, especially the students that are in the pre-thea and pre-ed programs plus the seminary. This is keeping their cost of education as low as possible through these endowments. Any questions on this, all this financial stuff? Good. Now you have a report of the Standing Constitution Committee. This is an important one from the Board of Doctrine's perspective, because this whole, the discussions with us and the Wells and ELS, we believe is not being done according to the Constitution. That there is a committee that the President established to handle these discussions, but the Constitution says this, current wording in the Constitution. It, that is the Board of Doctrine, shall, at the request of the President or the Convention, represent the Church of the Lutheran Confession in doctrinal discussions with other church groups. Now, the way the President has read that is, at the request of the President means that's only if the President asks you to represent us. But if the President doesn't ask you, he can ask somebody else. And the Board of Doctrine's point of view on that is, no, that at the request of the President is just so the Board of Doctrine doesn't just go off willy-nilly and start talking to other churches. But it still says the Board of Doctrine shall represent the Church of the Lutheran Confession in doctrinal discussions. So the question was put to it was considered last year by the convention, but the convention said, okay, we want to hear what the Standing Constitution Committee says. And the Standing Constitution Committee says, look, we don't have the authority to decide this, but if you want our opinion is the Board of Doctrine is the one that should have been representing us in the discussion with the Wells and the ELS, not the President and two people that he appointed. But it's for convention to interpret. And convention in this case is acting very much like the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is going to decide what the law means. And if convention says we think it means that, but we don't want to go that way, then it would require a 3/4 majority to change the wording here. Anyhow, the Standing Constitution Committee believes the Board of Doctrine is correct on this. But there's two understandings you see on page 82. One is the President's understanding is, yeah, the Board of Doctrine will, whenever I request them to. But if I don't request them, I can request somebody else. The Board of Doctrine says, no, if there's going to be discussions, you're supposed to request we do it. Worship Committee, that's page 83. This is kind of an ongoing committee that just tries to gather and make available material for worship use. Not something as large of an undertaking as putting out a new hymnal. Although I think they kind of were established after the worship supplement was produced by John Ryan. John Ryan produced the worship supplement, and then the convention said, this is a good idea. We should have some newer stuff, not always just use 400 and 500-year-old hymns. So they continue to do that work. Emmanuel Lutheran College Facility Expansion Program Committee report. This is a long-range planning committee that they look at, okay, what are our needs off in the future? What are we going to need? Well, they've looked into it, and here you can see on page 85 what they are saying are potential needed projects for Emmanuel in the future.
Yeah, I need a pool hot tub too.
Well, okay, that first, the dotted thing there was they asked the students. No, council members, Yeah, they asked the Manual Student Council to provide student leadership with an opportunity to express their perspectives and priorities. That's on the bottom of page 84. These are the things they came up with. New gym, improved Wi-Fi, improved girls' dorm, HVAC, fitness center, increased number of restrooms in the commons, repaved pathways, a chapel, an improved theater, pool with hot tub. And then they asked them to give a priority to 3, and 60% of it went to the new gym, 20% went to improved Wi-Fi, 20% went to the HVAC system for the girls' dorm. So, number 2 is the manual AP statistics class conducted a student campus improvement study which resulted in the following priority list. New gym and with fitness center, you can read those, it's pretty much the same way. There's a few different ones. Anyhow, if you go to page 86, you will see the ILC facility expansion program. They give you their list. Here's what we believe needs to happen. A new gym, a theater and chapel, renovate both girls and boys dorm, restrooms, HVAC furnishings, improve Wi-Fi, expand maintenance and storage building to include heated workshop area. Yeah, we got that great big garage. There's no heat or cooling in it, so it's not much of a workplace in the winter, you know what I mean? Which is when you need a lot of equipment worked on. So it would be good if there were heat there. So then they give you the more detailed breakdown of the first 2, and they're talking about this new gymnasium. Shows you the location there. I'm having a hard time discerning what it is. I can't read the lettering.
Like, I guess, why do they feel they need a new gymnasium? I mean, I know it's been a while since I've been up there, but the last time I was up there with the girls, I thought their gym looked pretty good. I mean, compared to like Emmanuel and Cato, you know? So.
Right, so one of the, here's the arguments for a new gymnasium. With the number of teams we have, it's hard to work in all the practices. Secondly, it has a roof that is in rough shape, and that would require quite an expense just to get the roof by itself into good shape. But the question is it worth it? The third one is more room for fans and to be able to host bigger events. So that's the arguments in favor, and I think to a degree, I know I've heard some people argue this, that it might increase the likelihood that parents will send their children there if they have better a better athletic program. Now you can think of those what you want, and I have my thoughts on them, but this building that they proposed, this is still the exact same one that they proposed last year, and that came to $6.7 million. And then there was considerable concern that we are just expanding the athletic facilities and forgetting what Emmanuel exists for, and that is to glorify God. And there were a sizable number of people that took exception with the fact that, oh, you're just going to now repurpose this old outdated gym that you've already said is in rough shape and turn it into a chapel. We don't find that to be very God glorifying. And so they went back and said, okay, let's throw a chapel into the mix, make it a 2-phase project, building project. And this particular chapel, they looked at, okay, just building a small chapel that could hold, 140, 150 students, and they came up with a price of, I think it was 1.5 million, but then it wouldn't serve other purposes, such as the musicals and theater, and recitals and things of that nature. So what would they do then? Well, so they said, we gotta have something that can be a multi-use facility, and so they decided to come up with this thing that they're calling the, I forget what they call it, Chapel Fine Arts Building, page 92. And you can see on page 93 what it would kind of look like. It attaches to the commons. 92 shows you a bird's eye view of the floor. 93 shows you an outside view. So it would, the current gymnasium would go away and they would build this, and it came in at a cost of, what was it, 2.9 million. So you got 7 million for the gymnasium, 2.9 for the Chapel Fine Arts Building, $9.9 million. So, now, I have a perspective on that too. I think the whole campus is a chapel dedicated to God's glory. And I don't think that we specifically have to have a chapel on campus, but that's just my personal point of view. I'm not saying it would be bad to have a chapel. I'm just saying, I don't think we're not glorifying God because we don't have a chapel.
I understand that, like, modernization does tend to draw people, they like to see modern things, but the whole idea that build it and they'll come isn't always.
And that was one of the arguments for the new academic center back when we decided to do that was, one of the reasons parents aren't sending their kids is because it's not in good enough shape. But when we built the new academic center, we didn't gain more students. In fact, we've continued to see a decline in the student body. I'm not saying we shouldn't have built the academic center. And I'm not saying we should have. We did, so.
But I do
it's
you
fine.
do see in schools, like even down where we're at, we have a lot of magnet schools, and some of the, like the one school that has like the academics, they tend to do well. I mean, don't get me wrong, but that's not necessarily the draw. The draws are the ones that have the good athletics along with academics. So, I mean, I can see athletics being a draw for some people.
Right, except the thing we have to keep in mind is, just like as individual congregations, we can't compete with the world in the way the world approaches things. Yeah, we could put a $100 bill on each chair, and I'm sure we could fill the church every Sunday if we just let everybody know, hey, there's going to be a $100 bill here for you. We don't compete that way, and I think we should remember that in connection with our school program too. Its primary function is not to have an athletic program. It's great if we can, but our primary function is to increase the fellowship of our children and their continued education in the Word of God. That's its primary function.
I'm reminded this week, the Catholic Church had disowned one of their schools because they refused to take down the Black Lives Matter and the Pride flags, and whoever the diocese, whatever, I don't even know their names, but he had told them you have to take that down, and they refused, and then he took away their Catholic status as a school because he said we can't. That doesn't go with Catholicism as far as what we believe, and you don't want your school to go that way. Like athletics are great, but if it starts to take away from what our real purpose is, then
right. And I don't think that our athletics is in danger of that. It's just we have to be careful in our mind that we don't go that direction. I don't think there's an overemphasis at ILC on athletics. I mean, among the students maybe, there's always that mental competition that students have. Ooh, I want to be really good at this, but it's not like it's emphasized that, ooh, look at the great athletic program we have here. If anything, it may be a little underwhelming, right?
because they're still pushed it's still required that they have to take the religion classes, correct?
Right.
do we have students who, cause I know like at Emmanuel, Emmanuel Mankato, I was one of the students who I was not a member of the church, but I was attending, I still had to attend all of the religion classes and
Yep.
participate. Are they?
In fact, at ILC, if you are not a member and you attend, you do have to attend confirmation classes. So they do require that. So it's more than just, you also have to attend the religion classes. You have to go to a catechism class too. That all the other students who are already members don't have to go to. Okay, any questions or comments? There's just a couple of loose ends there at the end, the statistics. That's just, okay, what's the numbers? How many members do we actually have? What's the offering? You know, it gives you a rough idea of what the ministry throughout the CLC is. Total ooh, I was closer my first time. Total contributions, 9,119,000. If you add everything up, that's pretty good for. I'm not gonna say that. We don't need to pat ourselves on the back. Just put it this way: the Lord has blessed our church body significantly, even though we're a small church body. And if you want to look more closely at the compensation stuff, that is there on page 97. I did go over it a little bit, but any questions or comments at all about the prospectus or anything dealing with convention? Nope. All right. Well, then we'll stop there. Unless anybody has any questions or comments about anything else. I still got some time. It's Barb's birthday today. Happy birthday, Barb.
Happy birthday, Barb.
Birthday, Barb.
She says thank you.
Okay. Seth and Nicole hit a deer. Well, the deer hit them.
Yeah.
He wanted to ride.
The deer wanted to ride, apparently.
Hitchhiker.
They're mostly unscathed, but Nicole has a brace on her left arm.
Just some tendons though.
Just some tendons, but their car got totaled out. But God brought them through safely, so we're thankful for that.
Bad way to get a new car.
Now
hard
we
way.
wait to get the house first.
So, all right. I will conclude there then. Probably, yes.